So last time we spoke about destination data layouts and how it changes the data which are actually sent to the target system. I just want to follow up on that. So I have the WooCommerce and Mega Inventory set up here. So last time we've added the regular price and description fields. We didn't have any description and the price was $1. So I decided to go on and just edit it a little bit. So log description, we just say some DVD case, and we adjust the price as well. So we'll go, it's $12. It's an expensive DVD case. Let's update this. Okay. Now, if we go back, just run it again. Okay, that's done. Let's have a look at the product, refresh. And we have awesome DVD case in here and it's $12 now. Let's get into the mapping. How the desync actually validates the data and how you can transform it. First we look at the validation of the data. So the validation, the first point of validation is by the data type. So desync, basically when you, on your destination data layout, let's go destination here. So we have text, number, text and text. Let's say we had another field in here and it would be an email and it would be of type email. Let's just add it into the mix and we will make the SKU a required field as well. Okay, and we save the data layout, which we need to adjust the mapping template again. So if we go to the mapping, regenerate the map, that's gonna add the new field email. We'll save that and we will try to run the job again and see what happens. So we run it and it's done. We have a look at the output which was sent. You can see we have SKU, stock quantity, regular price, description and email, which is empty. Now let's pretend that we actually have an email field coming out of Mega Inventory. So what I can do in here, I'll just mimic that. I'll add a static value v, a constant, to the email field and I'll put in an invalid format of an email address. Let's try to put my bad email in there and let's save that and we try to run it again. And it fails and we have an error. So what happens? We'll have a look at the log. So you can see just by looking at the more, you can actually see where it failed. So we have the source data, so we know that the call to Mega Inventory to retrieve the data was successful, but we don't have the output data. So something must have happened before it hit actually the destination data layout and before the data was sent to the target system. So that indicates that something happened in the mapping. And if we have a look at the log, we have the my bad email in the product's email failing, and it's a destination field validation. And it's basically telling me that the field email is not valid and that goes back to the data type. So if we look at the data layout, I specifically said that it's of type of email. So it needs to be in a correct email address format. Because in the mapping, we're getting my bad email, which is obviously not a valid email address, desync caught it and threw an error. So how do we fix it? Let's pretend that we have a valid email address. I'll just put it in. And we run that again. And now it easily went through. And you will see on the output the static value for every single product. Basically, there's gonna be an email field with this static value, my email at email.com, in it. So, oops. Let's have a look. JSON. That's not a valid JSON. What did I do in here? Here we go. So, as you can see, email and my email for it's a static value, so it's gonna repeat for every single product coming from Megaventory. But that just shows you that you really need to be aware of the data types of the fields as well, and that there is internal validation desync actually makes before sending the data to the target system. Another one, the required field, which we've added the SKU. So if there is no SKU, if this is empty, if there was no SKU coming out of Megaventory, which, like in our example, we have SKUs for every single product. There's DVD, another one, so we have SKUs for every single product. But if there was not SKU, or if it wasn't mapped, desync would basically throw an error. And again, we can demonstrate this, so I will remove the mapping, save it, and we run the job. See what happens. Error. And what does it say? Again, it went to Megaventory, it got the data, but then something happened in the mapping because we don't have the output data. Look, you can see that the product SKU is required and cannot be empty. So if you have required field, it needs to have a value every single time, otherwise it's gonna fail in the mapping engine. What you can do though in the mapping engine, if you don't have a value you would normally map, you can put a default value in. So if I go in here in the function, there's a default value, and every single field has this. And you can say, okay, I want to default this SKU value, which is, doesn't really make sense, but my non-existent SKU. And I hit OK. So if there is no value coming from the source system, from Megaventory, or if there is no mapping, then desync will put in this string, my non-existent SKU. It's just free text. It's gonna go in basically by default, and we'll test it right now. So I'll run this. And it went through. And if we have a look on the data which were actually sent to WooCommerce, you can see that desync went ahead and put my non-existent SKU in that SKU field and sent it to WooCommerce. So the validation, there are a certain amount of data types you can actually use, and each would have some kind of validation. So if we go back to, let's go back to the destination data layout here, and if we try to add field, the text, There's really no validation. There's automatic translation of it. So if you put a number in a text, it's gonna still work. Desync will just wrap it in parentheses. Number URL. So URL, it's gotta be a valid URL. So HTTP colon slash slash something, valid domain name basically. Email, as we saw, valid email address. Date needs to follow the format you actually choose. So there are some predefined formats, so you can choose a custom format. Same with time, exactly the same. You have a time format predefined, or you can choose your custom. Daytime, same thing. Both of them are boolean as well. So boolean has three forms of representation. You have the standard one where it's true or false. So if you get if you get from the source data anything else than true or false, it's gonna fail the validation. There is a number representation which is basically 1 or 0, and you can also specify custom, so it could be yes, no, and so on. And I think that's pretty much it. There's only object which doesn't have any validation in here, but it just shows you that you need to be aware of the data types as well, and the data basically need to be transformed correctly. So if in this example WooCommerce is expecting a valid email and the valid email is not coming in from the source, then desync will stop it, unless you put in some default value which needs to be also a valid email. So I hope that makes sense. We'll look at the data types a little bit in more detail, and we go through the dates, and we'll go through the Boolean fields, and how it all fits together and how it needs to be mapped.